All right, we are going to look at our second set of problems here where we are looking at simplifying our rationals. Rationals, guys, just means ratio. So think of it as the same thing as a fraction. It's kind of same way of thinking of it. Okay, so we're going to look at simplifying more fractions, also known as rationals, and this time we're going to look at simplifying them by using factoring. Now this is something, again, we reviewed last week, so hopefully you're feeling relatively confident in your factoring skills here. But what we want to do, so let's look at these examples here. So if you want, go ahead, pause the video so you can copy these down. But looking at these problems here, so we want to look at these one at a time, okay? We can tend to look at this thing as a whole and get really overwhelmed. And what I want you to first know is we cannot just cross off like this, okay? You cannot top to bottom cross off yet. We have to factor first, okay? But the reason why we can't do that is because of addition and subtraction. So make a little note to yourself, cannot cancel when there is addition or subtraction in between your terms. Okay, and we'll look at more examples, so hopefully help you understand what that means. But let's look at these one at a time. So I'm gonna kind of cover this bottom one up with my finger, and we're just gonna look at this top quadratic. So x squared minus 11x plus 24. I want to go ahead and factor that quadratic. So what multiplies to get me 24? That will add to get me negative 11. Again, I'm ignoring the bottom for now and just focusing on the top. Okay? So kind of thinking through that, if you need to, again, pull up that multiples chart that's linked in the assignment page, but thinking through what multiplies to get me 24, that adds to get me negative 11, that would be negative 8 and negative 3. Negative times a negative gets me a positive, and then when I add those together, I'll get negative 11. So in the top, okay, so my x squared minus 11x plus 24, I'm going to replace that with x minus 8 and x minus 3. Parentheses are important. If you do not have parentheses, okay, it will make a difference here in a second. So again, the top, I went from this, factored it to this. This is exactly what you guys are used to doing, exactly what we did last week. Now let's go ahead, cover up the top, and let's focus on the bottom. Again, I have a quadratic, so I'm going to go ahead and factor this. So what multiplies to get me negative 24? That will add now to get me a positive 5. So kind of think through these options here. And what we're going to do here now is a positive 8 and a negative 3. That will multiply to get me negative 24, and this adds to get me 5. So again, the bottom fraction, bottom quadratic, I'm going to go ahead and replace that with my factors, x plus 8, x minus 3. Okay, so all I did was factor these separately and rewrote them as their factors, exactly like what we did last week. Now here's the new part for this week. Just like what we did in our last video, we can cancel top to bottom now. Okay, so this is where these parentheses are important because it's all one group. I'm keeping all of that stuff together. So I want to look at, in my denominator, do I have any x minus 8s? Right, this is all one group, and I don't have that, so I can't cancel. But what about x minus 3? Let's look at our denominator. Well, I do have one of those. So as a whole group, right, this is staying all together, x minus 3 can cancel with x minus 3, right? We have to keep that whole group together. I cannot go like this with my x's and my 8s, right? Because there's addition and subtraction inside of these parentheses. But I can look at them as a whole group. So looking at what's left over, I have x minus 8 as a whole group over x plus 8 as a whole group. So I cannot cancel any more things because these are all one group. And that's it. That would be our answer. Let's go ahead and look at one more together, and then I'm going to have you try 2 on your own. Now, let's take a peek here. X squared minus 36. This looks a little bit different, okay? And we haven't looked at one of these yet. X squared minus 36. Hopefully you're thinking in your head, well, we're missing that middle x term, right? Look at this bottom one. We've got an x squared here, just like this one, and we've got a number just like this one, but we're missing that middle term, okay? You might remember we used to rewrite this as x squared. Well, what represents nothing? 0 plus 0x minus 36. These are the exact same thing, and it might help you kind of understand how to factor this a little bit better, okay? So when you're looking at something like this, x squared minus 36, just go ahead and rewrite it with your middle term as a 0, okay? All right, let's go ahead and factor these two quadratics. So what multiplies to get me negative 36, that will add to get me, here's where that 0 is important, that will add to get me 0. So go ahead and think through that. We've got negative 6 times 6 adds to get me 0. So this top, I'm going to go ahead and replace it with groups. Remember, in parentheses, x minus 6, x plus 6. All right, let's go ahead and look at the denominator here. Again, I have another quadratic, so I'm going to go ahead and factor this. What multiplies to get me 54? That adds to get me negative 15. Okay, so you can kind of think through this a little bit. And hopefully you are thinking negative 9 and negative 6 will get us 54, and then when we add those together, we will get negative 15. So in the denominator, I can replace this with x minus 9, x minus 6. All right, so we simplified our quadratics, we factored them. Now let's go ahead and cancel. And remember, we want to cancel our groups. These are all in parentheses, so it has to be everything the same. So x minus 6, I also have one of those in the bottom. But x plus 6 is different than x minus 9, so I can't cancel anything there. So I can go ahead and rewrite my answers. You guys can put the parentheses if you want. You also don't need them for your answers, but that's fine if you would like. All right, go ahead and copy down these two problems here and try these two on your own. So go ahead, pause the video, give yourself a second, and then try these two on your own. All right, let's go ahead and check our work here. So up top for this problem, I have my quadratic. I'm going to go ahead and factor it into negative 7 and 4, so x minus 7, x plus 4. In the bottom, that's where we had, again, that missing middle term. So hopefully you recognized that you could rewrite this as x squared plus 0x minus 49. So what multiplied to get you 49? That added to get you 0. So that's how we got x minus 7, x plus 7. And then from there, you want to go ahead and cancel your like terms. Now, I wrote this again so you guys could see my work a little bit more, but you probably just will cancel it right here, and that's completely fine. But I put an extra step in here to hopefully help you see it a little bit better. I canceled my x minus 7s, and I'm left with, right, x plus 4, x plus 7 as my answer. And again, if you have parentheses around those, that is completely fine. All right, taking a look over at number 4, factored our quadratics here, rewrote them, and here we can cancel x plus 9 with x plus 9. And so our answer there, you can see, is x plus 1 over 2. All right, guys, this is simplifying rational expressions using factoring. Again, we are going to be using this in our video number 3, but wanted to make sure we went over these specific examples here. So use these notes to help you in your practice for today. All right, guys, please join my office hours if you have any questions.